My name is Zara, and at 28 I thought I knew exactly who my family was. That illusion shattered the day my father handed my inheritance worth over $2 million to my stepsister for a measly $50,000 debt. "You should be grateful," he said, as if I should thank him for destroying my future. What he did not know was that I had been recording everything. What followed was a calculated takedown that exposed decades of lies, financial manipulation, and the shocking truth about who really deserved that money. Hey everyone, before we dive into this family revenge story, let me know in the comments where you are watching from. If you have ever dealt with family betrayal or financial manipulation, hit that like button because this story is going to show you exactly how karma works. Make sure to subscribe, because you will not want to miss how this unfolds. Trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. The whole mess started 3 months ago, when I received a text from my father asking me to come to his house for an important family discussion. I should have known something was wrong when I arrived and found my stepsister Miranda already there, sitting smugly at the dining room table with a stack of papers in front of her. My father Richard had always been a man of few words, but that day he seemed particularly uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact as he explained that Miranda had gotten herself into some financial trouble. Apparently she had racked up $50,000 in credit card debt and was facing bankruptcy. "I have made a decision," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "I am transferring your inheritance to Miranda so she can pay off her debts and get back on her feet." I stared at him in complete disbelief. "You are what, Dad? That inheritance was from Mom. She left it specifically for me when she died 5 years ago." Miranda leaned back in her chair with this satisfied smile that made my blood boil. "Zara, you have to understand. I have children to think about. You are single with no responsibilities. You can rebuild your life, but I cannot let my kids suffer because of my mistakes." "Your mistakes," I repeated, my voice rising. "You went on shopping sprees, bought a new car, took luxury vacations, and now you want me to pay for it." My father held up his hand. "The decision is final. You should be grateful that I am teaching you the value of family sacrifice. Your mother would have wanted you to help your sister." My mother had specifically written in her will that her savings money she had inherited from her own parents and carefully invested for decades should go to me for my future. She had made it clear that this money was mine, not the family's. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. "Mom specifically left that money to me. You have no right to give it away." "Actually, I do," Miranda said, sliding a document across the table. "Dad transferred everything into a family trust last year, and as the trustee, he has full discretion over distributions." I grabbed the papers and started reading. My hands were shaking as I realized what had happened. Somehow, my father had moved my inheritance into this trust without ever telling me. According to the documents, he had complete control over when and how the money was distributed. "When did you do this?" I demanded. "And why was I not informed?" "It was for tax purposes," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "The lawyer recommended it." That was when I knew he was lying. My father was terrible at deception, and his tells were obvious: the way he rubbed his neck, the slight stammer in his voice. Something else was going on here. I spent the next week trying to process what had happened. $2 million, money that was supposed to help me buy a house, start a business, secure my future, was gone. Just like that. Given to someone who had proven time and again that she could not manage money responsibly. But the more I thought about it, the more things did not add up. Why would my father suddenly decide to create this trust? Why now? And why had Miranda been so prepared with all the legal documents? That is when I decided to do some digging. I started with the most obvious question: when exactly had this trust been created? I called my father's lawyer, pretending I needed some paperwork for my own records. The paralegal was helpful and mentioned that the trust had been established right after Miranda's divorce was finalized. Miranda's divorce. That was 8 months ago. Why would my father create a trust for my inheritance right after Miranda's divorce? I decided to investigate further. I knew Miranda had been married to a guy named Jason, and their divorce had been messy. So I did what any reasonable person would do in 2025. I stalked their social media history and looked up public court records. What I found made my stomach turn. According to the divorce filings, Miranda had hidden assets from Jason during their marriage. She had been secretly moving money around, including taking out loans against property she had claimed was worthless. The judge had ordered her to pay Jason a significant settlement, but Miranda had claimed she was broke. But here was the interesting part, the timeline. Miranda had started talking to my father about family financial planning right around the time her divorce proceedings were getting ugly. She had been laying the groundwork for this theft for months. I also discovered something else through my research. Miranda had been telling people that she was expecting a large inheritance from our father. I found Facebook posts from 6 months ago where she had mentioned being excited about finally getting what I deserve from the family. The pieces were starting to come together, but I needed more evidence. I decided to pay a visit to my father's longtime accountant, Harold, who had been doing his taxes for over 20 years. Harold and I had always gotten along well, and I was hoping he might give me some insight into this trust situation. Harold was clearly uncomfortable when I asked about the trust. He kept shifting in his seat and avoiding direct answers. Finally, he sighed and said something that changed everything. "Zara, I told your father this was a bad idea. I warned him that moving your inheritance like this could be seen as fraudulent, especially given the timing with Miranda's legal troubles." "Fraudulent? What do you mean? Your father did not create this trust for tax purposes. Miranda convinced him to do it so she could access the money before her divorce was finalized. She needed liquid assets to hide from the court." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Are you saying they committed fraud?" Harold looked around nervously. "I am saying your father was manipulated into making a decision that may not have been entirely legal. And I am saying that if the right person looked into this trust, they might find some irregularities in how it was established and funded." That night, I sat in my apartment with all the information I had gathered spread out on my dining room table. Bank records, court documents, trust papers, social media, screenshots. The picture was becoming clear. Miranda had orchestrated this entire thing. She had manipulated our father into stealing my inheritance so she could hide assets from her ex-husband. But what really made me angry was not just the money. It was the way my father had looked at me when he said I should be grateful. Like I was the selfish one. Like I was the problem. I realized then that this was not just about getting my money back. This was about exposing the truth and making sure that both Miranda and my father faced consequences for what they had done. I was going to take them down, but I was going to do it smart. After Harold's revelation, I knew I could not go in guns blazing. If I was going to expose Miranda and get my inheritance back, I needed to be strategic. I also needed help from someone who understood the legal implications of what had happened. The next morning, I called my college roommate Jessica, who had become a forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud cases. When I explained the situation, she was immediately interested. "Zara, this sounds like textbook asset concealment," she said. "If Miranda moved your inheritance into a trust to hide it from divorce proceedings, that is fraud. And if your father participated knowingly, he could be in serious trouble too." Jessica agreed to help me investigate, but she warned me that we needed to be careful about how we gathered evidence. We cannot do anything that could be construed as illegal or unethical. Everything has to be above board if you want this to hold up in court. Jessica showed me how to properly research the timeline of events and cross-reference financial documents with court filings. What we discovered was even worse than I had initially thought. Miranda had not just hidden my inheritance from her ex-husband. She had been systematically draining joint accounts and transferring assets to our father for months before the divorce was finalized. The trust containing my inheritance was just one of several financial vehicles she had used to move money around. "Look at this," Jessica said, pointing to a series of bank transfers on her laptop screen. 3 months before the divorce was final, Miranda transferred $60,000 from her joint account with Jason to your father's personal account. 2 weeks later, your father made a $75,000 deposit into the trust. So she was essentially laundering money through him. That is exactly what it looks like. And your inheritance was the perfect cover, because it was a legitimate large sum of money that could absorb these other transfers without raising suspicion. We also discovered that Miranda had lied to the divorce court about her financial situation. She had claimed to have no significant assets or access to family money, but the trust documents showed she was listed as a beneficiary with immediate access to distributions. The more we dug, the more evidence we found. Miranda had been planning this for almost a year. She had gradually convinced my father to consolidate various family assets into trusts and investment accounts that she could access. My inheritance was just the biggest prize. But Jessica found something else that made me realize how deep this conspiracy went. Miranda had been forging my signature on documents related to the trust. There were papers that supposedly showed I had agreed to the transfer of my inheritance, but I had never signed them. This is identity theft on top of everything else, Jessica explained. She used your signature to make it look like you had consented to moving your inheritance into the family trust. I stared at the forged signatures, feeling a cold fury settle in my chest. This was not just about money anymore. Miranda had stolen my identity, manipulated our father, and committed multiple felonies. And she had done it all while acting like she was the victim who deserved family support. That is when I made the decision to go nuclear. Jessica, I want to report this to the police. All of it. She nodded grimly. I think that is the right call. But first we should gather a few more pieces of evidence to make sure we have an airtight case. Over the next 2 weeks, we worked systematically to document everything. Jessica helped me trace every financial transaction, create a timeline of events, and organize all the evidence into a comprehensive report. We also discovered that Miranda had been using the trust money for personal expenses, spa treatments, designer clothes, expensive dinners that had nothing to do with paying off her debt. But I was not ready to go to the police yet. I wanted to confront Miranda and my father first. I wanted them to know that I knew exactly what they had done, and I wanted to give them a chance to make it right before I destroyed their lives. I also realized that I needed to be smart about how I handled the confrontation. If I went in angry and accusatory, they would just deny everything and possibly destroy evidence. Instead, I decided to play dumb and see if I could get them to incriminate themselves. I called my father and told him I had been thinking about what he said about family sacrifice, and I wanted to discuss the situation more calmly. He seemed relieved that I was not fighting the decision anymore, and agreed to meet me for lunch. At lunch, I brought a small recording device that Jessica had helped me set up. In our state, only one party needs to consent to recording a conversation, so everything we discussed would be legal evidence. Dad, I have been doing some thinking about the trust situation, I said carefully. I want to understand the legal structure better. Can you walk me through exactly how you set it up? He seemed nervous but started explaining how his lawyer had recommended consolidating family assets for tax purposes. As he talked, he contradicted several things he had told me before. First, he said the trust had been his idea, but then he mentioned that Miranda had suggested it. He also could not explain why my inheritance specifically had been moved without discussing it with me first. The lawyer said it would be better for everyone, he said, looking uncomfortable. Which lawyer was that? I would like to talk to them about the tax implications. Well, actually, it was Miranda's lawyer who helped set it up. My regular attorney was not available at the time. That was the first major admission. He had used Miranda's lawyer, the same lawyer who had been helping her hide assets from her ex-husband, to set up a trust containing my inheritance. I pressed a little further. And the timing, why did you decide to do this, right after Miranda's divorce? He rubbed his neck, his classic tell, and said Miranda was going through a difficult time. She needed family support. Did she ask you to move my inheritance into the trust? She suggested that having family assets in a trust would be better for everyone. More protection, better tax benefits. I had him on record admitting that Miranda had initiated the entire process, but I needed more. Dad, can I ask you something honestly? Did Miranda tell you she needed access to money for her legal situation? He was quiet for a long moment, then said, she mentioned that having some financial flexibility during the divorce would be helpful. There it was. He had just admitted on tape that the trust was created to help Miranda hide assets during her divorce proceedings. But I was not done yet. I had one more meeting to arrange, and this one was going to be with both Miranda and my father together. I wanted to get them both on record discussing their plan. I was going to make them confess to everything they had done, and then I was going to watch their world burn. The joint meeting with Miranda and my father was set for the following Saturday at my father's house. I told them I wanted to discuss moving forward as a family and putting this whole inheritance issue behind us. They both seemed relieved that I was apparently accepting the situation. What they did not know was that I had spent the week building an army of allies who were ready to help me take them down. First, I had reached out to Jason, Miranda's ex-husband. When I explained what I had discovered about the hidden assets and the fraudulent trust, he was furious but not surprised. I knew she was hiding money somewhere, he said. My lawyer suspected it, but we could never prove where she had moved everything. She was always talking about family trusts and investments that she claimed did not exist. Jason agreed to provide me with copies of all his divorce paperwork and financial discovery documents. He also put me in touch with his divorce attorney, who was very interested in learning about the asset concealment scheme. If we can prove that Miranda hid marital assets using this trust, we can reopen the divorce settlement, the lawyer explained. Jason could be entitled to significantly more money, and Miranda could face contempt of court charges. I also reconnected with Harold, my father's accountant, who was becoming increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. When I showed him the evidence that Jessica and I had gathered, he confirmed that what Miranda and my father had done was definitely illegal. I should have refused to handle the paperwork for this trust, he admitted. I knew something was not right, but your father insisted it was legitimate family financial planning. Harold agreed to provide me with copies of all the financial documents related to the trust, as well as records showing the suspicious transactions leading up to its creation. He also offered to serve as a witness if the case went to court. But my most important ally turned out to be someone I had not expected: my father's sister, Aunt Catherine. Catherine had always been the family's voice of reason, and she had never liked Miranda. When I called her and explained what I had discovered, she was outraged. I knew that woman was trouble from the day your father married her mother, Catherine said. But I never imagined she would steal from you. Your mother would be rolling over in her grave. Catherine revealed something that added another layer to the conspiracy. Apparently, Miranda had been pressuring my father to change his will for months, trying to get him to leave her a larger share of his estate. She had been telling him that I did not need family money because I was young and capable of making my own way. She has been systematically poisoning your father against you, Catherine explained, making him think that giving you money would somehow hurt your character development. Catherine offered to attend the Saturday meeting as a witness, but I had a better idea. I asked her to call my father before the meeting and express concerns about the trust arrangement. I wanted to see how he would react when questioned by someone else in the family. The call happened on Friday night, and Catherine reported back that my father had been extremely defensive and nervous. When she asked specific questions about the legal structure of the trust and why I had not been consulted, he had given contradictory answers and eventually hung up on her. He knows what he did was wrong, Catherine concluded. But he is in too deep now to admit it. Meanwhile, Jessica had been working with a private investigator to gather additional evidence about Miranda's financial activities. What they found was explosive. Miranda had been running a much larger scheme than we had initially realized. Over the past 2 years, she had convinced several elderly family friends to invest in fake business opportunities. She had taken their money and used it to fund her lifestyle while telling them their investments were growing. She is basically running a Ponzi scheme using family connections, Jessica explained, and the trust containing your inheritance was being used as proof that she had legitimate access to family wealth. We also discovered that Miranda had been lying about her debt situation. While she did have $50,000 in credit card debt, she also had over $100,000 in hidden assets that she had been keeping secret from both her ex-husband and my father. She did not need your inheritance to pay off her debts, Jessica said. She has plenty of her own money. She just wanted to get her hands on as much family wealth as possible. Armed with all this evidence, I felt ready for the Saturday confrontation. But first, I had one more preparation to make. I contacted Detective Maria Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit of our local police department. I explained the situation and provided her with a summary of the evidence we had gathered. She agreed to review everything and suggested that I try to get additional recorded admissions during my meeting with Miranda and my father. If you can get them to admit on tape that they created the trust to hide assets from the divorce court, we will have enough evidence to file charges for fraud and money laundering, Detective Rodriguez explained. She also warned me to be careful about how I handled the confrontation. Do not accuse them directly or threaten them with legal action. Just ask questions and let them talk. People often confess to more than they realize when they think they are safe. The stage was set. I had evidence of fraud, identity theft, asset concealment, and potentially elder abuse. I had witnesses, expert testimony, and law enforcement support. Miranda and my father had no idea what was coming. But before the Saturday meeting, something unexpected happened that made everything even more personal. On Friday evening, I received a call from my cousin David Catherine's son, who lived across the country. He had been talking to his mother about the trust situation and wanted me to know something important. Zara, I do not know if this matters, but Miranda contacted me about 6 months ago asking questions about family financial history. She wanted to know about inheritances, trust funds, any money that might be coming to family members in the future. What did you tell her? I did not tell her anything specific, but I did mention that you were supposed to inherit your mom's money someday. I thought it was just casual conversation, but now I realize she was probably gathering information to plan this whole scheme. That revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. Miranda had not just stolen my inheritance on impulse. She had been researching family assets and planning this theft for months. She had specifically targeted my inheritance because she knew it was the largest single sum of money she could get her hands on. The systematic nature of her planning made me realize something else: this was not going to be the end of it. If I did not stop her now, Miranda would continue to steal from our family. She would find other relatives to victimize, other assets to steal. I was not just fighting for my inheritance anymore. I was fighting to protect my entire family from a predator who had been living among us for years. Saturday morning arrived and I felt a strange sense of calm as I prepared for the meeting. I had my recording equipment, my evidence, and my plan. Most importantly, I had the knowledge that what I was doing was right. As I drove to my father's house, I thought about my mother and how disappointed she would be to see what had happened to the money she had worked so hard to save. But I also knew she would be proud of how I was handling the situation. I was not just going to get my inheritance back. I was going to make sure that Miranda faced consequences for every crime she had committed. And I was going to do it all legally, methodically, and completely. The time for playing nice was over. It was time for justice. What happened in that meeting would change everything, but I was ready for whatever came next. Miranda and my father were about to learn that underestimating me was the biggest mistake of their lives. I arrived at my father's house 15 minutes early and used the time to set up my recording equipment and review my strategy one final time. When Miranda and my father sat down across from me at the familiar dining room table, they both seemed relaxed and confident. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. I have been thinking a lot about what you both said about family sacrifice and loyalty. I began keeping my voice calm and measured. I want to understand the bigger picture here. Can you walk me through exactly how this trust arrangement benefits the whole family? Miranda immediately jumped in, clearly eager to justify her actions. Zara, you have to understand that family wealth is meant to be shared. Your mother would have wanted her money to help all of us, not just you. That is interesting, I said, because I have been looking at some old documents and it seems like this trust was created pretty quickly. Miranda, when exactly did you first suggest this arrangement to Dad? I watched her face carefully as she answered. It was just a conversation about financial planning. I suggested that having assets in a trust would be better for tax purposes and family protection. And this conversation happened around the time of your divorce. She shifted uncomfortably. The timing was coincidental. I was learning about financial planning because of the divorce, so I was more aware of these options. My father nodded along. Miranda brought some good ideas about protecting family assets from legal complications. There it was. He had just admitted on tape that the trust was created to protect assets from legal complications, specifically Miranda's divorce proceedings. I pressed further. Legal complications like divorce proceedings, well, any kind of legal issues that might affect family wealth, Miranda said quickly, realizing she had revealed too much. That makes sense, I said, pretending to accept her explanation. I guess I am just confused about the timing. Miranda, did you need immediate access to trust funds to handle your divorce expenses? I needed some financial flexibility during a difficult time, she admitted. How much financial flexibility? Just enough to cover legal fees and temporary expenses. I pulled out a folder I had prepared. I have been trying to understand the financial structure better, so I looked up some public records. It shows here that you received several distributions from the trust totaling over $200,000. That seems like a lot for temporary expenses. Both Miranda and my father went pale. They had not realized that trust distributions were public record. Those were family support payments, Miranda stammered. For what specifically? Legal fees, temporary housing, helping with my children's needs during the transition. I pulled out another document. This is interesting because I also found records showing that you made several large purchases during this same period. A $30,000 car, $15,000 in jewelry purchases, multiple luxury vacations. Were those also necessary expenses during your divorce? Miranda's face was turning red. How I spend my money is my business. Actually, it is my business when it is my money you are spending, I said, my voice getting harder. Because that money came from my inheritance. The trust money belongs to the family, she shot back. No, Miranda. The money in that trust came specifically from my mother's estate, which was left to me. Dad, you moved my inheritance into this trust without my knowledge or consent, and then you allowed Miranda to spend it like her personal bank account. My father was sweating now. The lawyer said it was legal. Which lawyer? Your regular attorney or Miranda's divorce lawyer who helped set up the trust? Silence. Dad, I need you to be honest with me. Did Miranda ask you to move my inheritance into a trust so she could access it during her divorce? He looked at Miranda, then back at me, and I could see him breaking. She said it would be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. And did you know that she was hiding assets from her ex-husband when you helped her set up this trust? I did not know the details of her legal situation. But you knew she was trying to keep money away from her divorce proceedings. Another long pause. I thought I was helping family. Miranda finally exploded. This is ridiculous, Zara. You are being completely selfish. I have children to support and you have no responsibilities. You can rebuild your wealth, but my kids need stability now. Miranda, I found something else interesting in my research, I said, pulling out another document. This is a bank record showing that 3 days after you received the first distribution from my trust, you transferred $25,000 to an offshore account, where your children's stability needs located in the Cayman Islands." Her mouth fell open. "I also found records of the other family friends you have been taking money from. Mrs. Peterson invested $50,000 in your fake consulting business. Mr. and Mrs. Williams gave you $30,000 for a real estate investment that never existed. How many people have you been stealing from, Miranda? Those were legitimate business investments," she said weakly. "Really, because I talked to Mrs. Peterson yesterday and she has been trying to contact you for months about her returns. Apparently you told her the business was doing great, but she has never received a penny back." I could see both Miranda and my father realizing that I knew everything. The confident expressions they had walked in with were completely gone. "Here is what is going to happen," I said, my voice now completely calm and controlled. "Miranda, you are going to return every penny you stole from my inheritance. You are also going to pay back Mrs. Peterson, the Williams family, and anyone else you have defrauded, and you are both going to sign documents returning full control of my inheritance to me." "And if we refuse?" Miranda asked defiantly. I smiled for the first time since the meeting started. "Then tomorrow morning I am filing criminal charges against both of you for fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and elder abuse. I have recordings of this conversation and every other conversation we have had about this trust. I have financial records proving the asset concealment scheme. I have testimony from Dad's accountant, testimony from your ex-husband, and testimony from the family members you have been stealing from." I pulled out my phone and showed them a text message. "I have also been in touch with Detective Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit. She is very interested in prosecuting this case, especially since it involves multiple victims and crosses state lines." The room was completely silent. "Oh, and Miranda, your ex-husband's lawyer is reopening your divorce case. Hiding marital assets in a fraudulent trust is contempt of court. You could be looking at jail time just for that." Miranda started crying, but I was not finished. "Dad, I am especially disappointed in you. Mom trusted you to protect her legacy and instead, you helped someone steal it from me. You betrayed Mom's memory, you betrayed my trust, and you committed multiple felonies in the process." I stood up and gathered my papers. "You have 72 hours to return my money and make arrangements to pay back everyone else Miranda has stolen from. If I do not see full restitution by Tuesday, I am filing criminal charges and civil lawsuits against both of you." I paused at the door and turned back. "Oh, and Miranda, I would start looking for a good criminal defense attorney. Because even if you pay everything back, Detective Rodriguez is still going to want to talk to you about the other fraud cases." As I walked out of that house, I heard Miranda sobbing and my father trying to calm her down, but I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They had underestimated me completely, and now they were going to pay for it. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of frantic phone calls, desperate text messages, and complete chaos in my family. Miranda and my father quickly realized that I was not bluffing about the criminal charges, and they both began scrambling to try to fix the situation they had created. The first call came from my father at 6 in the morning on Sunday, less than 12 hours after our confrontation. His voice was shaking as he begged me to meet with him privately. "Zara, please, we need to talk about this reasonably. I never meant for things to go this far. Dad, there is nothing to discuss. You have 72 hours to return my money or I am filing charges. It is that simple. But you do not understand. Miranda does not have the money anymore. She spent most of it. Then you better figure out how to get it back, because that is not my problem." The second call came from Miranda herself, alternating between crying and screaming. "Zara, you are destroying this family over money. How can you be so cruel? I am not destroying anything, Miranda. You destroyed this family when you decided to steal from me. Now you get to deal with the consequences. I will pay you back, but I need time. I cannot come up with $200,000 in 3 days. You should have thought about that before you spent my inheritance on luxury vacations and jewelry. By Monday morning, the situation had escalated dramatically. Miranda's ex-husband Jason had filed a motion to reopen their divorce case, citing new evidence of hidden assets. His lawyer was seeking an emergency hearing to freeze all of Miranda's remaining assets until they could conduct a full accounting of what she had hidden. Detective Rodriguez called me to provide an update on the criminal investigation. We have reviewed all the evidence you provided and we are prepared to file charges. The district attorney is particularly interested in this case because it involves multiple victims and sophisticated fraud schemes. She also told me something that made the whole situation even more satisfying. Miranda's offshore account that you mentioned, we traced it, and it turns out she has been using it to hide money from multiple sources. The IRS is now investigating her for tax evasion as well. But the most dramatic development came when Harold, my father's accountant, called with shocking news. "Zara, I think you need to know something. Your father came to see me this morning and he wants me to help him liquidate his retirement accounts and sell his house to pay you back. He is willing to do that. He is panicking. He realizes that if this goes to court, he could lose everything anyway. But here is the thing. When I started looking at his finances to see what options he has, I found some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities? It looks like Miranda has been stealing from your father, too." "There are several large withdrawals from his accounts over the past year that he says he does not remember authorizing. I think she has been forging his signature on financial documents." This revelation added another layer to Miranda's crimes. She had not just stolen my inheritance. She had been systematically robbing my father as well, probably planning to leave him broke while she disappeared with all the family wealth. When I told Detective Rodriguez about Harold's discovery, she decided to accelerate the timeline for filing charges. "We are going to arrest Miranda tomorrow morning," she told me. "We have enough evidence now to charge her with multiple felonies and we do not want to give her time to destroy more evidence or flee." That evening, Aunt Catherine called with an update from her end of the family. "Zara, word has gotten out about what Miranda did and the whole family is talking. Your cousins are furious, especially David, since he feels like he accidentally helped her by giving her information about your inheritance. What else are people saying? Everyone is supporting you completely. No one can believe that your father went along with this scheme." People are also coming forward with stories about Miranda trying to get information about their financial situations over the years. But the most important call came from Mrs. Peterson, the elderly family friend, who had invested $50,000 in Miranda's fake business. "Zara, dear, I heard about what you discovered and I want you to know how grateful I am that you exposed her. I was beginning to think I would never see my money again. Mrs. Peterson, I am so sorry that she took advantage of you. Do not apologize for her actions. But I do want you to know that she approached several other people in our community with the same fake investment scheme. There might be more victims than you realize." This information was crucial because it showed that Miranda's fraud was even more extensive than we had documented. I immediately passed this information along to Detective Rodriguez, who promised to investigate the additional victims. On Tuesday morning, exactly 72 hours after my ultimatum, my father called me in complete desperation. "Zara, I have been able to gather about $150,000 by liquidating my retirement accounts and taking a loan against the house. Miranda says she can come up with another $25,000 by selling her car and jewelry. Can we work out a payment plan for the rest, Dad? This is not a negotiation. You stole $200,000 from me and I want every penny back immediately, but we cannot come up with the full amount right now." "Then you should have thought about that before you committed multiple felonies." At exactly 9 o'clock Tuesday morning, Detective Rodriguez called to let me know that Miranda had been arrested at her apartment. She had been charged with fraud, money laundering, identity theft, and elder abuse. Her bail was set at $250,000. Ironically, more money than she had stolen from me. She tried to claim that everything was your father's idea, Detective Rodriguez told me. But we have the recordings of her admitting that she initiated the trust scheme plus all the evidence of her other fraud activities. The arrest made the local news that evening, and suddenly everyone in town knew about Miranda's crimes. The story described her as a serial financial predator who targeted family members and elderly community members in an elaborate fraud scheme. My father called me that night, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, he sounded genuinely remorseful. Zara, I know I have ruined everything between us. I know you probably cannot forgive me. But I need you to understand that I never intended for this to happen. Miranda convinced me that helping her was the right thing to do for the family. Dad, you are a grown man who chose to steal from your own daughter. Miranda did not make you do anything. You are right. I made terrible decisions, and I am going to have to live with the consequences. Yes, you are. But even as I felt satisfied that justice was finally being served, I knew that the hardest part was still ahead. My relationship with my father might never recover from what he had done, and our family would never be the same. However, watching Miranda get arrested and seeing my father face the reality of his actions felt like the first step toward getting my life back. 6 months later, I sat in a downtown coffee shop, reviewing the final paperwork that would officially close this nightmare chapter of my life. My inheritance had been fully restored. Miranda was serving 18 months in federal prison, and my father was slowly working to rebuild some semblance of our relationship. The legal proceedings had moved faster than anyone expected. Miranda's case was so clear-cut that her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal rather than go to trial. In addition to the prison sentence, she was ordered to pay full restitution to all her victims and banned from handling anyone else's finances for 10 years. The most satisfying moment had come during her sentencing hearing when the judge addressed her directly. Mrs. Miranda Collins, you systematically betrayed the trust of family members and elderly community members for your own financial gain. Your actions represent a particularly cruel form of theft because you targeted people who loved and trusted you. Miranda had tried to give a tearful apology, claiming she was desperate and never meant to hurt anyone, but Judge Harrison was not buying it. The evidence shows that you planned these fraudulent schemes for months, possibly years. You forged documents, lied to court proceedings, and showed no remorse until you were caught. This was not desperation. This was calculated criminal behavior. My father avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with the investigation and making complete financial restitution to all victims. However, he had to pay significant civil penalties and lost most of his retirement savings in the process. The hardest part for me was not the money or the legal drama. It was rebuilding my relationship with my father. He had betrayed my trust in such a fundamental way that I was not sure we could ever be close again. We started meeting for coffee once a month, neutral territory, where we could talk without the emotional weight of family history pressing down on us. During one of these meetings, he finally gave me the apology I had been waiting for. Zara, I know I cannot undo what I did. I know I betrayed your mother's memory and destroyed your trust in me. I let Miranda manipulate me into thinking that taking care of her was more important than protecting you. Dad, what hurt the most was not just the money. It was the way you made me feel like I was selfish for wanting what Mom left me. I know. Miranda spent months convincing me that giving you that inheritance would somehow spoil you or make you dependent. She made me believe that forcing you to be independent was better parenting, but it was not your decision to make. Mom left that money specifically for me. You are absolutely right. I had no right to give away something your mother intended for you. These conversations were painful but necessary. I was learning to forgive my father not because what he did was acceptable but because holding on to anger was only hurting me. The most unexpected positive outcome of this whole ordeal was how it brought me closer to other family members. Aunt Catherine and I had become much closer, and my cousins had rallied around me in ways I never expected. cousin David, who felt guilty about inadvertently helping Miranda gather information about family finances, had become one of my strongest supporters. He helped me set up better financial protections and even offered to be my backup contact for important financial decisions. "What Miranda did was not your fault," I told him during one of our phone calls. "She was a predator who would have found another way to get the information she needed." I just keep thinking about how she manipulated all of us. She spent years building relationships just so she could exploit them when she needed money. The experience had also taught me valuable lessons about trusting my instincts. Looking back, there had been red flags about Miranda for years that I had ignored because I wanted to maintain family harmony. She had always been quick to discuss other people's financial situations, always interested in who was inheriting what, or who had money troubles. She had a pattern of borrowing small amounts of money from family members and being slow to pay it back. She had been unusually interested in my mother's will and my inheritance plans. I had dismissed these behaviors as typical family nosiness, but they were actually signs that she was constantly evaluating family members as potential targets for financial exploitation. The most important lesson I learned was about setting boundaries. I had spent years trying to be the peacekeeper in family situations, avoiding conflict even when people were treating me badly. This experience taught me that sometimes you have to be willing to burn bridges to protect yourself. I also learned the value of having a strong support network outside your immediate family. Jessica, my college roommate who helped me investigate the fraud, had become one of my closest friends. Harold, my father's accountant, had shown me what real integrity looked like when he chose to do the right thing despite personal cost. Detective Rodriguez had also become an unexpected mentor, teaching me about financial crime prevention and introducing me to other people who had survived similar family betrayals. "What you did took tremendous courage," she told me during our final meeting. "Most people in your situation would have just accepted the loss rather than fighting back. You probably prevented Miranda from victimizing many other people." As I signed the last of the legal documents that Tuesday afternoon, I reflected on how much I had changed over the past year. I was stronger, more confident, and much better at recognizing manipulation tactics. I had also developed a deeper appreciation for the people in my life who had proven themselves to be truly trustworthy. My inheritance was now safely invested in accounts that only I could access with proper legal protections in place. I had used part of the money to help Mrs. Peterson and the other elderly victims get back on their feet, which felt like the right way to honor my mother's memory. I had also started volunteering with a local organization that helped elderly people avoid financial scams, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs of family financial abuse. The experience had been traumatic, but it had also been empowering. I had faced down criminals who tried to steal my future, and I had won. I had exposed the truth, protected other victims, and ensured that justice was served. Most importantly, I had learned that real family is not just about blood relationships. It is about the people who stand by you when things get difficult, who tell you the truth even when it is hard to hear, and who support your growth, rather than trying to exploit your resources. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt genuinely grateful for everything that had happened. Not because it was easy or pleasant, but because it had shown me exactly who I could count on and exactly how strong I could be when I needed to protect myself. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who betrayed your trust? Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from, and learning to set boundaries with family can be one of the hardest but most important things we ever do. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share your own experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is dealing with family betrayal right now. Make sure to subscribe for more real-life justice stories, and remember that sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their bad behavior. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that you deserve to be treated with respect and honesty, especially by the people who claim to love you.